So here's an example triglyceride. Here, these three carbons make up the glycerol, and then we have the ester linkage over to the acyl group. That's a term I may have to go back and say a little more about, but essentially the fatty acid, the acid had its carboxyl group here, and that was joined to the hydroxyl group on the glycerol. Water was removed, and that forms this ester linkage, and we have three of those. And I have drawn three different fatty acids across here. So this first one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. I did not draw in all the hydrogens. You can review the earlier videos to see what that's about. So this 6 carbon fatty acid could be called hexanoic acid, with the hex meaning 6 carbons, the an indicating that there are no double bonds between the carbons. If there are any double bonds, then the an becomes ene, but that's a topic for another video. But this is also known by its common name of caproic acid. I also drew here in the middle, I drew an 8 carbon saturated fatty acid. That would be called octanoic acid, but it is also known by its common name of caprylic acid. And then I drew a 10 carbon saturated fatty acid. That would be decanoic acid, also known as capric acid. Now, the CAPR that is common to all three of these names is from a Latin word referring to goats. All of these fatty acids are very common in the skin oils, which come from sebaceous glands of goats, and they actually kind of smell like a goat. So that's where the capra comes from in all of these. If you are like me, were born in late December or maybe early January, your zodiac sign is Capricorn, the horn of the goat. So anyway, the reason I picked these three for this particular example is that these are examples of something that is a buzzword these days in nutritional circles, and that is MCT. It stands for medium chain triglycerides. This is a triglyceride that I've drawn, and the three fatty acids that are on it are all of what's considered to be a medium chain length. Okay, depending on who's writing the definition, medium chain triglycerides range anywhere from 6 to as many as 12 carbons in the fatty acid chain. These have 6, 8, and 10. Now, some people only consider 6 through 10 to be medium chain. And as with so many other things, there's always going to be some disagreement, but no disagreement that these three are considered to be medium chain triglycerides. Now, a triglyceride could have 3 identical fatty acids on it, or like this one, it can have 3 different fatty acids on it. I just chose 3 saturated medium chain triglycerides because of the popularity of MCTs right now. So MCTs are abundant in coconut oil, although coconut oil does have about half of the fatty acids found in coconut oil are of the 12 carbon variety. It's something called palmitic acid. Still, there are a good deal of the 6 to 10 carbon chain length medium chain fatty acids in those triglycerides found in coconut oil. So that gets at that little buzzword. The MCTs, several health benefits, Supposedly they improve brain function. You can even find these in dog foods. Purina made a dog food called Bright Minds, and it has a pretty good percentage of MCTs in it. And in my own dogs, I could see a difference in their alertness and activity level when they started eating that. So that addresses the MCTs. I want to address a couple of other things here while we're at it. I've already gone into cis and trans in another video, a previous video. I want to point this out. When I drew cis and trans for you the first time, we had a couple of carbons. We'll say that this was the carbon at the far end from the carboxyl group, which makes it the omega carbon. And then, so the first bond, second bond, third bond from the end was here. That makes that an omega-3 fatty acid. And I talked about how the two hydrogens here, if they were both on the same side of the double bond, the way I've got it drawn, they're both on the top side. I could draw this thing vertically and have them both on the left or both on the right. I could have drawn this flipped over with both of them down, just so they're on the same side. That is called cis. And if, let's do this like this. If the chain continues on and the hydrogens are across from each other like this, that is called a trans orientation. So this is still omega-3, assuming this is our omega carbon, but it has the trans orientation to it. Again, the trans fats are generally not natural. They occur when people take a cis unsaturated fatty acid and artificially break half of this double bond. And if you're watching this, you've probably had earlier parts of organic chemistry to know you know that double bonds consist of two different types of bond called sigma and pi. And again, that's a subject for another entire video. But when you hydrogenate a double bond, you break the pi bond and leave the sigma bond intact. And if we broke the pi bond, then we could add two more hydrogens to these carbons and turn it into a saturated fat or a saturated fatty acid. That process is called hydrogenation. When fats are artificially hydrogenated that way, artificially turned into saturated, sometimes that process is reversed and the double bond reforms, but when it forms back, then the hydrogens end up in the trans orientation. And again, research has shown that trans fatty acids are not good for our health. All right. I think I'm going to cut this off at this point, and I may come back and do another little bit about the shapes of fatty acids as a result of having cis or trans arrangements at double bonds.